right, friends, welcome back to Higher Deeper. We are officially starting our study on Ruth, and we are in the beautiful Huntington Library Gardens.
Yes, the Huntington Library and Gardens.
And it's beautiful here, and we just wanted to make it kind of a cool setting for you guys as we go through Ruth. So we're going to split Ruth up into 4 videos, so feel free to watch them in a row. Split them up sequentially as you read the chapter, or if you haven't read the book at all, we still hope that these videos will be informative, insightful, and helpful, and inspire you to then go read it. So wherever you are in Ruth, we intend for our videos to accompany whatever stage of reading you're at, even if it's 0. But we hope that you do join us in reading Ruth. Eventually, if you haven't.
And if you've read it before, maybe as we're talking about things in this study, you'll start to see something a little bit differently, or who knows, if you have different thoughts on this chapter, put them in the comments too. Maybe it's something that we haven't thought of. And so we're just going to explore the book together, wherever you're at with it. So today we're talking about Ruth the Loyal. And so in chapter 1, it begins with Naomi and her husband Elimelech. And there's a famine in Bethlehem where they live. So they decide to move from Bethlehem over to Moab. Now this is a big deal because they must have really been in hard times to have considered this move. The Israelites did not have a good relationship with Moabites, but Elimelech was desperate, so he took his family there. Once they got there, they had 2 sons, Mahlon and Kilian, and then they married 2 Moabite women. Eventually, sadly, Elimelech and his 2 sons die, and then we're left with 3 widows, Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth. And Naomi decides that she's going to move back to Bethlehem. The famine has gotten a little bit better, and she decides she wants to go home, but she tells her daughter-in-laws, go be with your family, find new men to marry, because I don't have any sons, and you can just continue with your life. Orpah agrees and goes back to her family, but Ruth says, no, I'm going to stay with you. I'm with you to the end. And so Ruth travels with Naomi back to Bethlehem, and they arrive during the barley harvest.
Yes. So that's a wonderful summary of Ruth chapter 1. Hold on, we're going to wait for the... We were inspired to title this chapter ourselves Ruth the Loyal because we were both moved by how loyal Ruth is to Naomi in this chapter. And what's interesting is that after Ruth's urging that the girls stay back, the heartfelt response that Ruth has to that is almost what the author wants us to concentrate on. And I think that that's really beautiful.
This verse is her responding to Naomi, and it shows an even deeper meaning knowing that she's trusting God in this moment.
Yeah. Okay, so right before Ruth responds, Naomi is saying, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said in verse 16, entreat me not to leave you, or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you will go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you and me. I think it's really amazing that God put this on her heart, because although she didn't know God, nor did she worship him, this overwhelming compulsion to go with Naomi, I think, is God's hand.
Yeah, and that's one of the themes that we're talking about, is God's hand throughout this entire book, and especially in this chapter. To see that plan that God has for her at work, even though it doesn't specifically say, and then God's hand moved, and Naomi said this, or Ruth said this. You can see it throughout the Bible. You can recognize how God works, and the fact that this was not expected of Ruth. She chose to, and that was God's will for her life. And to know that she chose it, even though from the outside it wasn't necessarily like the smart decision or the one that her people would have advised her to make. I recognize that through things in my life when you make these decisions and people are like, what are you thinking? But you know that that's what God has for you, and you just have to trust him even when other people doubt, when you know for sure.
Yeah. one of the questions that we may ask ourselves and that other people around us may ask isn't just like, are you sure? Even when we know it's God talking to us, it's, are you sure it's God? You know what I mean? And it's not just something that you feel is right, and then maybe you just think that it's God. But the more that you're in the Word, and the more that you're prayerful with Him, and I'm saying you're, meaning like me, and my experience,
All
what
of
I've
us, yeah.
experienced in my relationship with the Lord, is that the more I'm in the Word with Him, and the more prayerful I am with Him, the more I can hear His voice and separate His voice with my thoughts. And it doesn't always necessarily mean that, like, oh, that's not something I would normally think, so I know it's God. It doesn't always necessarily work that way. It's just, I don't know. For me, like, maybe the thought comes more immediate than any of my own thoughts would have ever come. Or maybe it's just more sure, when I know I'm a very kind of like indecisive, questiony type of person. It's different every time, but, to kind of be able to watch Ruth throughout these chapters and relate it to those times when you think that something that you might be doing seems crazy. I don't know. I think just leaning on Him and trusting Him to then move you to the next step afterwards, even if everything after your decision is a question mark, is, I think, something that we can all be inspired to do through Ruth.
Absolutely. And her certainty is clear. She's not questioning it. She's like, I'm doing this, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though she doesn't know what lies ahead.
We end chapter 1 with them ending up in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest, which is significant, and we'll find out why in chapter 2.
Yes, and there's one more verse that we want to go over really quick. So when Naomi is going back home to Bethlehem, that's where she's from, people know her there, and Ruth is joining her as a foreigner, so no one knows Ruth. But when Naomi gets home and her friends approach her, this is what she says to them in verses 20 and 21. She says, "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune upon me." So Naomi meant pleasant, and Mara meant bitter. And honestly, the first time I read this, it seemed a little bit dramatic, but at the same time, I appreciated it very much because Naomi is being so real in this moment, and so honest and upfront. And in our lives, I won't speak for everyone, I'll just speak for myself. In my life, it's very easy to try to put on a front and tell everyone you're doing great and tell everyone you're doing fine, whether it's posts on social media or in person, talking just to your friends. It's hard to expose those difficult times in your life and to say that you need help or to say, hey, I've been through some stuff. And in this moment, Naomi starts with it right off the bat when she gets back to Bethlehem. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So that wraps up chapter 1,
right? So
right?
that wraps up chapter 1. We hope that, what were our objectives? We hope that it was a good summary, whether you have read it or not. If you haven't read it, we hope it inspires you to read it. And we hope that that you comment and let us know how you feel about Ruth chapter 1.
Yeah, hopefully you were kind of on the same page with us with some of the themes, but if you came up with different themes or idea about it, let us know. We're learning through this process as well, and we'd love to hear from you.
Or if you have any questions about something that you think that we skipped or that we're not getting about Ruth, then ask us about it, because we want to hear kind of all angles.
True. And we won't always hit everything because we don't want these videos to be like forever long.
Yeah.
But we're going to try to do like a good quick summary. But if you think there's something important that we do need to discuss, just let us know.
Yeah. All right, cool. We'll see you in chapter 2.